A lot of buzz in the automobile industry these days, and that is, of course, because demand in India here is back. It's buoyant, it's strong, and it's also an important time for German car maker Volkswagen because it is the unfolding of what has now been a long-promised strategy, the SUVW strategy that sees the India 2.0 program go into high gear. We are joined by board member at Volkswagen responsible for sales, marketing, and after sales worldwide, Klaus Selmer. It's good to see you, and thank you for your time today.
Well, of course, it's good to be here. Good morning. Good morning from Germany.
No, I appreciate your time. And, like I said at the start, this is a very significant time for the company. You have, of course, spent a lot of time here in India as a brand, but in many ways, things that are happening right now are a fresh start. And with the Taigun, we see, a huge impetus coming from what Volkswagen will represent here as itself in the Indian market. So for you, this becomes a very, very key product.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Obviously, the sales trend in the past years is something that we want to turn around. I'd like to thank all our partners and customers in India bearing with us. I think we now have a fantastic product. The lineup with its most recent member of the family, the Taigun, which the first reaction is very promising from our Indian valued customers. So thank you for that. We're expecting 5,000 to 6,000 Taiguns sold every month. We already have a list of pre-sold cars above 10,000. So we couldn't be more happy to come back and be back and accelerate from there to a new level of importance and share in the Indian market.
I have to say that when it comes to certain brands, they sort of start with a natural advantage. So despite the fact that, yes, you may have lost ground, the consumer still sees VW as a very strong brand in terms of expectation. With the Taigun, you're ticking a lot of boxes because, of course, like everywhere in the world, here in India too, SUVs are sort of, the hot topic, the segment that dominates, was always important, therefore, to sort of begin this whole plan with a high volume SUV.
Oh, absolutely. And as you said, Siddhartha, we have a 35% share of SUVs globally now, which jumped 5% points from 2019 to where we are now. So it just shows that the SUV is obviously a really important player in that automotive market. And the Taigun, of course, plays in that category as well. But I think most importantly, from my point of view, it's also local for local. So it's being produced in India for India. It creates jobs and it's part of the society, the bigger family. And thank you very much. You mentioned that Volkswagen has a good position in the market because we have a tradition for being high quality, for being contemporary design, for being easy to use. We have a great service network with our partners. So people look after you and your car. It's not just a product. It's almost like a family and a promise to stick together. So I think they're good prerequisites. And now let's see what the market does and how the car is being received in the market.
As the product goes, of course, I can vouch for it too. I had quite a great time driving it, spending a lot of time with the 1.5. The requirements that the customer here has, a very demanding customer, I might add, you're meeting a lot of those requirements now. It's the right size, right footprint, right segment. It's got the connectivity and the sort of gadgets inside, and of course enduring design. The trick, though, very often in India, people say it comes down to pricing. Would you agree that there is a lot of pressure when it comes to high volume and pricing?
Oh, I couldn't agree more, of course. We need to be reasonably priced. We want to, as Volkswagen, of course, we want to reach customers at the right point of time for the right price. Now, the pricing has not been published yet. So our friends in India, they're increasing the attention to see where we are. I think we're in a good spot. And I think the price that we are able to offer with that car being produced in India is an attractive price. But of course, at the end of the day, everybody in that value chain has to make a profit to have a sustainable business model. But let's see. I mean, I'm really excited because I think we're on a good spot with that price. But let's see what our consumers in India say.
The reason I asked that question is because, when a product does take off, it is accepted and, you do have, of course, two engine types, so we are expecting a sort of a wider price band anyway. The customer tends to then get very excited about that product. Word of mouth catches on, as we've seen with some of the rival products, especially in this segment, being the fastest growing segment in the market. How worried are you about then production meeting with that demand?
Well, as I said, we're prepared for 5,000 to 6,000 sales when we are in full swing per month. So I think we're prepared for a bigger demand, and we're prepared for the success. Now let's walk our talk and let's see how the reception really goes. I have high expectations, and our friends and colleagues of our Volkswagen India team, I think they have everything in place. So bring it on.
I like the sound of that. But tell me this, Mr. Zelma, that, what part of this strategy for you, at least, in the boardroom, in the closed doors of the boardroom, if I may, also involves the volume or the success that comes from sister brand Skoda in this space?
Well, I think we're brothers and sisters, Skoda and Volkswagen, of course. I think we all benefit from the technical experience and our engineers that come up with, great technology that we can then sell in the market as a sales team. So I think we're in the same family, we're brothers and sisters, but we're competitive. And Skoda, is of course our front in terms of managing the Indian market. So they have a clear lead task there. They have to make that a success. But of course, with a valuable, very, very well-positioned brand like Volkswagen in the market with its partners. So they take the lead, but it's a team effort. So it's like a captain, but it's a double that depends on each other for the success of the overall group, the Volkswagen Group overall then.
All right. Now, of course, a lot of that rests on the MQB A0iN, the platform, and all the products that then come from it. You have been pretty transparent saying that, look, Taigun's the first of those products. We know that a sedan is expected next, in the compact sedan space. But when you say SUVW, how much of that sort of SUV element rests on this platform? Is it just about the Kushaq and the Taigun, or can you tell me that there's more on that?
As you know, our platforms, they're scalable. Our platforms, they offer a lot of hats. Now, wait and see what else we can come up with. We can change the dimensions on the same platform to many potential cars that we will then offer in India. But of course, at the end of the day, cars like that have to pencil. They have to generate a profit for everybody in the value chain. So that's why we don't want to overdo it. We don't want to over-deliver. We certainly don't want to over-promise at this point of time. What I can say is that India, as a car market, and we agree to the forecast that India within the next 3, 4, 5 years will be the third biggest car market in the world. This is something that we find truly inspiring. And of course, we want to be part of that game. And a 3% market share that we aim for in the next 3 to 5 years is, of course, also a challenge. But I think we have reasonable confidence to reach that market share and be back in the Indian market as an important player on the top of volume segment.
One thing that we have seen is a bit of a change, at least something I have observed over the last few years, has been sort of a slight switch where earlier Volkswagen was very clear about, this is the segment, this is our product for the segment. But now you have a lot of lines blurring. You mentioned SUV market share globally going up by 5%. Not surprised to hear that because, you're seeing a lot of action in the compact space. You've got cars like the T-Roc, you've got the T-Cross, you've got the Taos, you've got the Taigun. I mean, this is not what we expected from Volkswagen or would have been surprised a few years ago from Volkswagen. Today, it's becoming the norm for you. Do you think in India it also makes sense to look at, what you just mentioned, that I understand you have certain plans, but in the long run, do you think that there is room to start looking at multiple models, more SUV based and not really hatchback or not really sedan?
Well, the SUV segment now is 35%. So the bigger part of the equation still rests with other potential hats. So a notchback or a sedan, of course, is something that we need to contemplate with when we want to be successful in India. Will there be many derivatives? I doubt it, actually. The variant complexity we have to drive down. That's a clear task. It's part of our cost management. And let's not forget, we are transforming Volkswagen as a brand into electrifying our lineup. And the transformation, of course, has got different speeds in North America versus China versus India. But at the end of the day, we're transforming the company. So we can't do it all at once. We can't build the platforms for electrification while then extending our complexity on the ICE variant. So we need to drive that down in order to be able to invest without increasing all costs into battery electric vehicles, which then in the second half of this decade will also be something that we want to offer in India.
I do want to talk about EVs for sure, but one quick point about what you mentioned in terms of the the need for being a little sort of careful in terms of how many different top hats you offer. But you've also said that you want a significantly higher market share here in India. Now, the reason I was asking that question about different kinds of SUVs in the compact space versus other body styles is because in India today, as things stand right now, hatchbacks still do contribute a large amount of volume, and they are still a massive chunk of our overall market. So when you talk about becoming the third largest market, hatchbacks, at least in the foreseeable future, will continue to play a role. How then can you stay away from that segment?
Well, we need to, you are absolutely right, of course. We need to study the market. We need to see what the competition does there. We need to see what we have in our shelves. And we need to see on what makes sense in our long-term future. What I'm saying is that we can't do everything at the same time. So we need to focus on certain segments. I think SUV has got the highest potential to further grow. So I think that is a perfect decision. The notchback or sedan is, of course, something that Indian customers still prefer over many other potential derivatives. So we're looking into that. And let's see what else we come up with, because at one point of time, we have to make a decision whether we take our money that we can invest to then transform our lineup in India into battery electric vehicles as well, or whether we have to add another hat in the Indian market in order to conquer a bigger part of the market in terms of customers. Okay, so let's see how that plays out.
That's fair. No, and it's good that you mentioned that, because that is the next point I want to ask you, that when it comes to, again, as things are today, what is your thinking on India and electric? Because I understand that today, as of now, there are no decisions in terms of making that investment. But as we have seen across the world, the sort of projections that people had, whether it was brands or analysts, towards the adoption or acceptance of EV, a lot of that has been actually accelerated on the ground, and when it comes to the consumer. In India too, those of us who are optimistic on this, like myself, we do expect that this will happen a lot quicker than what people are today projecting. So given that, what are your thoughts with the EV space? Because, of course, globally, it's a huge priority for you.
Oh, it absolutely is. And our purpose within the Volkswagen brand is way to zero. So by 2050, we want to be completely CO2 neutral with our whole value chain. In Europe, to give you the example, by 2030, 70% of our new cars sold are projected to be battery electric vehicles. And India, I think with the governmental program FAME, I think you're on the right track. I think that is going to accelerate. I think the tipping point into battery electric vehicles in India will potentially be later than Europe, as an example. And for India, of course, we need to have the right product in the battery electric vehicle space. And we just showed a concept car in the auto show in Munich, formerly known as the IAA Frankfurt, is the IAA Munich now, which was the ID Life, which is a compact sort of urban car that is a lot more than a car. It's almost your extended living space. It's got, all the gaming possibilities. It's got a big screen that comes up. You can watch movies in there. You can fold the seats. You can lie in there. You can look at the stars because the roof comes open. So I think the philosophy of that car is really interesting. And of course, if I look at our valued customers in India, that might be something, especially because we are aiming for an entry price point of 20,000 euro. That might be something that we can contemplate to bring to India someday. in its final form. This is a concept car, let's not forget that. It will look different. It's testing the waters, but the temperature was not ice cold. The temperature was actually rather nice. It felt good, the reception. It was actually the most viewed car on the show. So I think we are hitting a sweet spot there, and maybe that is something that Indian customers will also want to look into.
But what's the thing that you'd like to see change? Is it taxation policy? Do you think there needs to be higher incentivizing towards electrics to, for it to be a good business case as well? Right now, I know it's prohibitively expensive to think about launching compact electrics in India.
You spot on, Siddhartha, absolutely. So yes, of course, if the Indian government is serious about its program FAME, I think there needs to be more than just what we see at the moment, that there are projections, and I think there needs to be a push. Has it to be subsidies? That's not my position to make that decision, because it's a lot more than that. We need the charging infrastructure. We need renewable energy. If we generate the electricity for those cars without renewable energies from fossil fuels or coal, of course, the equation doesn't really work. So it's a lot more if you want to manage the transformation into electricity when it comes to mobility and CO2 neutrality, which is something that we all have to work for. It's a big game. Of course, every government has to play a role in there. If you look at Europe or Germany, the subsidies, of course, help lowering the transaction price point for consumers to buy into that future of mobility.
Well, the good news for you, I can tell you, is that the interest here is still very high. And in fact, when we had an ID family vehicle becoming World Car of the Year, we were very surprised just how well that story did for us with our readers here in India. So yes, I do think that there is an expectation there as well, perhaps, from Volkswagen, given who Volkswagen is.
Oh, absolutely. And we're in a good spot. The MEB platform, which is the ID3, ID4, ID5, maybe something below and maybe something above. We'll see. There are more numbers available. So let's see what we come up with. But I think the platform has proven that it can be successful. I think it's from a technology point of view, it's variable, it's flexible. Even outside companies, outside the VW group, have bought the platform in order to launch their cars on our platform. I think it shows that VW is on the right track. It's an early adapter. I think we're a little bit ahead of competition. Not all competition. There are other respected car brands in the battery electric vehicle space. No question about that. But I think we're in a good spot.
I have to tell you personally, though, the pandemic has meant no travel then. So the ID family is like on the top of my want to drive list. These are cars I want to get my hands on.
Siddhartha, come over here. We have a couple here, a couple of cars. And of course, I drove my ID3 today to work, and I always enjoy it.
I look forward to the next opportunity to be in Wolfsburg. It's been a while. But I appreciate this. One last thing which I want to ask you. We come back to the Taigun and the imminent launch. Yes, you mentioned the kind of volume projection that you have from the vehicle and what it means to you. But in terms of what it does for the brand, in terms of perception, in terms of strengthening a certain expectation for the buyer here in India, and specifically here in India, how important is that? What does it mean to you? And also the fact that this car will then go to other markets like Mexico, etc. How important is that?
Well, it's probably the most important product that we currently have in India because it's made in India. It's tailored for the Indian consumer. It's almost like a restart. That our sales numbers are not where we want them to be. This car will help us to get back to where we belong. So that car is of utmost importance for us.
All right. And the export angle to it, the fact that it's
the export angle, yes, you mentioned Mexico. We have SUB-SAHARA as well as potential markets. We're looking into that. It's always good to have to spread your opportunities. But I think first and foremost, our focus is now on India with the car. It's tailored for that market. And we're really happy about the first signals, that car to be received on a very positive sentiment. And now let's see what the sales numbers look like in the next upcoming months.
I do wish you and the team here all the best with that. Again, thank you for your time. I hope that our next meeting is in person, given that travel is starting to open up now. But thank you.